Kevin was 8, almost 9. It was time to go to school. Well, we had 20 minutes. The girls had already left with their dad. And I said to Kevin, I really need your help today. There's so much to do around here. We have 20 minutes. Please, I need your help. Kevin looked around and he said, yeah, you do need my help. And I said, that's right, Kevin, I need your help. And he said, well then, how much will you give me? Well, I wasn't quite ready for that. So I said, Kevin, for everything you do for me, I'm going to give you a hug. And his little chin dropped, and he said, Mommy, that's not enough. Oh, I said, well then, for everything you do for me, I'm not only going to give you a hug, but you lucky boy, I'm going to give you a kiss. And once again, his jaw dropped. Mommy, that's not enough either. Okay, I said, Kevin, for everything you do for me, I'm not only going to give you a hug and a kiss, but I'm going to give you a... And at that moment, I hadn't the faintest idea what I was going to say. And out came, I'm going to give you a kick in the pants. And he looked at me. I could see he was breaking. But once more, he said, Mom, that's really not enough either. Okay, Kevin, this'll do it. Not only am I going to give you a hug and a kiss and a kick in the pants, but I'm also going to give you a nibble on the ear. And he looked at me once more and said, I'll take it. What do you want me to do? I said, Kevin, go in and get your bed made. He ran in there with all the energy that an 8-year-old can put together and made his bed and came running back and said, Mom, give it to me. And I gave him a little hug and I gave him a kiss and I reached over to nibble his ear and I forgot that kick in the pants. I gave him a little kick in the pants and he squirmed away and he said, what next? You know, I got more work out of that kid in that 20 minutes than I think I ever got out of him. Now, if I would go around the world and say, oh, you're having trouble getting your kids to do their chores around the house, well, all you have to do is give them a hug and a kiss and a kick in the pants and maybe a nibble on the ear. What would people think of me? I mean, that's absurd. But I learned something from that. To discipline does not mean to punish. To discipline comes from the root word for both discipline and disciple, that same root word. It basically means to teach. And there are many ways to teach. And by being negative and pushing and forcing, we all know that's not the best kind of teachers. Kids learn much more from a teacher who has a great relationship from them. And so we need to become people, both parents, grandparents, friends, relatives. We need to become people who are willing to take time to teach our children the things they need to know in order to get along in this world. So, with that creative idea, I'm going to share with you 10 creative ways or 10 ways to be the kind of leader that God needs you to be in your homes. And some of these are repetition, but just know The points that I'm going to be mentioning again are so important that I couldn't leave them out. So here we go. First thing we need to do is have goals for our teaching. What do you want to accomplish? In the military, they always have end points to work toward the end, the end that they want to have accomplished. And then they have steps to get there. And in education, you have an end point that you want the kids to learn and steps to get there. And in our homes, we need to have an end point. What are our goals for working with our children? And I'm going to suggest 5 of them. I'm going to suggest that goal number 1 should be to use effective teaching methods. So whatever method you use, let it be the kind of method that will actually reach the goal you want to reach. Encourage self-discipline and responsibility is a second goal. You want kids, you don't want to be standing over them forever telling them what to do. You want kids who are self-disciplined. You want to encourage them to make decisions on their own and to be able to handle their lives. So that's number 2. That self-sufficiency, that ability to discipline themselves. You want to prevent or resolve conflict. You don't want what you're going to do to make things worse, right? You want things to be better. So that's goal number 3. Goal number 4 is you want to preserve their self-worth. You want them to feel good about themselves. You don't want to treat them in such a way that they feel like they're nothing and they're just being pushed around and nobody loves them. Goal number 5 is you want to discipline them always or teach them always with the goal you have in mind. Here's an example. 2 children were told to clean the kitchen. And they were having a miserable time together. I want to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. You do the dishes. No, I don't want to do the dishes. And they were arguing, and mother was so frustrated at them. And she tried to think of a goal to help the kids get along. And so she said, yes, I want the kitchen cleaned, but you can't do it alone. First of all, I want you to sweep the floor. But you can't use the broom, she told to one kid, and to the other, you can't use the scoop, that you put the dust in and the crumbs in. You got to work together. And now began the giggling and the working together as they said, no, sweep it this way. I'll put the scoop here. No, and then they ended up switching around. The other person took the broom, but they had to finish the job doing it together. What was Mom's end point? It wasn't necessarily to get the kitchen clean, although that was one end point. The end point was to help these kids get along in whatever they did together. They didn't have to argue. They didn't have to push each other around. And so, quote, her discipline, the consequence, the way she corrected their behavior in the kitchen when they were so miserable to each other, was to give them a task that they had to work together to get it accomplished. So, with those things in mind, here comes some repetition. Number 1, the number 1 leadership method for growing good kids is to keep their love cups full. Have you heard that before? All right, that's number 1. Now, the interesting thing is that husbands and wives kind of fill in each other's inadequacies. So, if Dad comes home and finds out the kids haven't done any of their afternoon chores, and he says to the kids, Kids, what's wrong with you? I told you to get the lawn mowed before I came home, and you haven't even started on it. And I can't believe you left all your toys outside when I told you they have to be put in the toy box. What's wrong with you kids? Well, he was extra hard on the kids. So, because sometimes if one parent, I've got a teeter-totter. Do you have seesaws here or teeter-totters? What? Seesaws, okay. So we got the fulcrum down here. So if one parent comes down heavy on the kids, you know what the other parent does automatically? He or she tries to balance things out again. And mom will say something like this to the kids. Well, I know your dad was a little heavy on you, but he loves you so much. And I'm just going to fix you your favorite dessert tonight. How would you like that? And oh, by the way, there's a special story I'm going to tell you for story time too. Now, what's mom trying to do? Balance out dad and mom. Okay, now this is what generally happens. In the area of discipline, one parent is usually more authoritative, more the authoritarian, maybe I should say, and one parent is more the understanding, or I might even say the more lenient of the two, okay? And what they're trying to do is just walk, the teeter-totter, trying to get it balanced. But what happens, mom is so nice to these kids in this illustration that I gave, and dad says in his head, these kids don't deserve that. And so what does dad do? But he comes down heavier. And to try to balance things out, because he comes down heavier, what does mom do? She moves out on the other side of the teeter-totter, and instead of coming together to balance things out, they move further away from each other until one falls off the end of the teeter-totter and the other goes bang. A study was done of couples that were having a miserable time getting along. They were considering divorce. But before divorce, the people that were working with them told them they had to take a course. And once they finished the course, then they could choose to go ahead and divorce if they wanted to. Half of them, randomly selected, were given a marriage course on how to get along with each other, how to show appreciation to each other, how to be a little bit more romantic, how to whatever they do in marriage courses, okay? The others were given a parenting course. Many times, the big problem in marriage is not really the couples. It's that they have two different ideas about how to parent their kids. And they're at odds with each other. And one moving to one side of the teeter-totter and the other moving on the other side. And they found out that the couples who took the parenting course, the majority of those couples stayed together. The couples who took the parenting course stayed together. So, all I'm telling you is remember all of these things and put your ideas together. You're not going to come out on the same page unless you talk about it, read a good parenting book, discuss it, get together with a small group and talk to them and find out what the other parents are doing with children your age. And it's amazing what you can learn from each other. You don't need an expert necessarily. You need a good guide, a good parenting book. Most of my books are set up that way. The Parenting Boot Camp is a very short book, just 10 chapters, and it's got lots of questions to ask. And I also have PowerPoint presentation that goes right through the book. I mean, it's like word for word through the book, but you can see it up on the screen. And you can do that in the home easily. Just all gather around a computer and have 2 or 3 couples together and talk about these issues. Also, the book, The First 7 Years, is set up 52 chapters. I know that's a lot, but it's like 1 chapter a week for a year. You can get through that book. And the chapters are very short, to the point, and have little discussion things that you can talk together, just husband and wife, or two wives can get together and share what's going on in their homes. You don't have to do it in an organized group necessarily, but learn to think outside the box when it comes to teaching your children, and you'll have so much more fun. Okay, that's number 1. Keep your kids' love cup full, okay? Number 2 is teach limits. So as I'm saying, keep those love cups full, I'm not saying don't have limits. Limits are absolutely essential to good parenting. For kids to feel secure, like I talked about last night, they've got to have limits. After all, it says in the Bible in Proverbs 13:24, those whom the Lord loves, do you know that last word? He corrects, or he disciplines. Those whom the Lord loves, he corrects. So that's what parents have to do too. But, as I mentioned before, you can only discipline as much as you're willing to love. So you got to fill this kid up with encouragement, with appreciation, with words of affirmation, and he'll take any kind of teaching a lot better. All right. So let's see, where do I want to go now? Okay. But you've got to start with limits that are obeyable. So you do not tell a little child, eat your dinner. You do not tell a kid, go to the bathroom now, and expect to have some success in the body. You know, you don't tell the kid, go to sleep, and I mean it, go to sleep right now. You see, those are not obeyable limits. Those are not things, because the kid has control. If your kid doesn't want to eat, he can go days and not eat. If he doesn't want to, I have had kids who are in such rebellion that, because I used to teach nursery school, that they could go 3 to 4 days without having a bowel movement, because they were so against their parent pushing them to sit on the toilet. It's amazing the strength of children when they go into that rebellion mood. So you don't start trying to get them to obey by giving them an instruction that they have control about. Anything about their bodies, they basically have control. All right? So you've got to think of things that you can correct for. For example, you say, turn off the TV. Now, if your little one wants to, he can choose not to do it. But this is your rule. Tell the child one thing to do, and then make sure you follow through. You got it? Say it with me. Tell the child one thing to do, and then make sure you follow through. So you make sure the kid isn't involved in something else, that you've got his attention. You say, turn off the TV, because he's just playing with the knobs, and he's just turned on the TV. And if he totally ignores you, you go over, and at the same time that you're saying it again, you're saying, I said turn off the TV, and either you help him turn off the TV or you turn it off. Again, you say, I mean what I say. pick up the kid and take him and get him involved in something else. And if you do that, you will teach your child to obey, because he knows he only has one time to hear it and do it by himself, or you're there to reinforce what you want and you help him do it. You don't have to scream at him, you don't have to yell at him, you don't have to make a big deal out of it. The child will learn when mom speaks, she means what she says. Now, once you get him on your side, or her on your side, then you can begin asking things that you can't really control. And, you know, before we head out on the road, go to the bathroom. And once that kid has an obeyable spirit, he will go and sit there. Hopefully he can go. But that's the way life is. If he's in rebellion mode, it's really, really tough. Now, you don't know what rebellion mode is until you get there. But I had a mother who called me when I used to have a column in the San Bernardino Sun, which was a huge paper that went all over the inland area next to Loma Linda. And I didn't have a phone number that people could find easily. And I got this telephone call, and I lifted it up, and I said, and those were the days before cell phones, and I lifted up the receiver, and I said, this is Kay Kuzma. And she said, are you that Dr. Kuzma, that Dr. K who writes the column? And I said, yes, that's me. And she said, God, don't hang up, because I'm going to kill my kid. So I said, okay. What did your child do? And she said, my daughter is 3 years old, and she's driving me crazy. She said, she's doing things that no kid should be doing. Well, let me tell you, she just took a metal fingernail file, you know what I'm talking about, that has a metal point on it. She just took the metal fingernail cleaner, or whatever you say, you know, and she just took that and just walked around the whole brand new concert piano that we have, and put a mark all the way around that grand piano. And I said, okay, I understand why you're about to kill her. What else has she done? Because usually it's not one thing. Usually it's a number of things. And she hesitated a little bit, and she said, the other day, I pulled the bed out from the side of the wall, and I noticed that she has taken a pair of scissors and has cut off the curtains that were down behind the bed, and I hadn't realized it until I moved the bed away that the bottom of the curtains have been cut off. Okay, what else has she done? And she said, well, ever since her little brother was born, and all of a sudden, you know, lights go off in my head. Ever since her little brother was born, she has been going to the living room when she has to urinate, and she's urinating behind the plants in the living room, and the living room is beginning to stink. What's happening? What's happening? Well, I began to tell her that basically her kid had a lot of anger underneath. And we talked about the iceberg situation. And I said, you know what? Go get some help. When these kinds of things are it's like a kid has a temperature of 102. and maybe that's the urinating behind the plants. But then it goes up to 104 when it's cutting off the curtains. But when it gets to 106, when it's ruining your grand piano, just go get some help. And it might take a while. But many times when you go get help, you learn why the kid is doing this. It might be jealousy over that little brother that came into the family. It just might be an antagonistic mood against mom and her parenting. You don't know what it is until you get that help. But children need to have limits. And these are the limits I suggest, because most of us have, hundreds of limits. You can't do this and you can't do that, and watch out for that and whatever else. And you say to the kid, well, I told you not to do that. And he said, I can't remember. When did you tell me that? Because we have too many rules in the family. So I suggest, number one, you may not hurt yourself. Number two, I'm only going to give you three now. Number two is you may not hurt others. Number three is you may not hurt things. So the kid knows, number one, he can't run out in the street by himself. That's a good way for him to get hit by a car, somehow get hurt out in that street. So you say to him, when you're heading toward the street, take my hand, because you may not do something that will hurt yourself. And going out in the street by yourself is a good way to get hurt. So you attach that to another principle that you've got to, watch when you're going across the street. Okay, next thing first is you may not hurt yourself. The next thing, you may not hurt others. So when he starts to push his brother because he wants something, or say bad things to you because he's angry at you, you just merely say, wait a minute. We have 3 rules in this house. You may not hurt yourself. You may not hurt others. Hey, those words hurt my feelings, and you may not say those again. So you make those rules practical to various situations. But they're based upon the general principle that you may not hurt others. The third one, you may not hurt things. You may not destroy property. You may not, and if the kids are throwing rocks next to the outdoor windows, you just say, kids, you may not hurt things. And that's a good way to break a window, and that is forbidden in our family. So let me show you how to throw rocks in the puddle or whatever, make it a positive thing. And because rocks are not bad to throw, they're kind of fun to throw when you're a kid. You just got to have the right kind of target, and so that it's a safe thing. So if you can remember those 3 rules, it will help you. If you establish them early, it will help you as you deal with your children. Okay, now as you're beginning to set limits for your children, I have a list of a number of things you need to do that is getting ready to set that rule or set that limit. First, you've got to get your kids' attention. You can say all the words in the world, and they won't have any effect on that kid. If that kid is, watching his iPad and not paying a bit of attention to you, if that kid is, coloring on something or making a block building or whatever that young kid is doing, if that kid's an older kid and he's involved in something else and you're telling him all these things that he needs to do before he leaves for school, he will never hear you unless you get the kid's attention. So simply say, I'm going to be telling you something extremely important. I need to see your eyes. Look at me. And again, look at me is kind of like a command. So if you say your need, I need to see your eyes, it's less of a command than look at me. All right? But get the kids' attention. Make sure the limits are clear. Many times we give limits that are not clear to our children. We say, clean up your room. What does that mean to a kid? To the kid, it means, throw the stuff that you can see on the floor under the bed. But you've got to make clear that, see these toys in the middle of the floor? I want those toys. When I come back, I want those toys on this shelf, all sitting on the shelf. Do you understand? To make sure he understands that he has heard you say, repeat back to me what I asked you to do. And if the kid can repeat back to you, what you're doing is helping the brain remember the instruction that you gave to your kids. Now, the thing that we often forget is the time limit. Many kids, when we ask them to clean their room, think they have the next 16 years to get it cleaned. So if you don't want to wait 16 years for that clean room, you say, I want the room cleaned in the next 20 minutes. And just to remind you, I'm going to set my clock on my phone or alarm clock to 20 minutes. In fact, you can have your kid help you set up the alarm system. And when it rings, I expect everything to be clean. So it's really great to do it on a clock, because then the kid sees the hands of the clock moving around, or on a timer where the kid can actually see it going around. But the idea is you get his cooperation, you make it a game to get it done in such and such a time. You make that very clear that these are the limits. And then you can come up with a measurable or a meaningful consequence. If the room is not clean, this will happen. Again, you've got to be really, really creative. And it might be, if the room is not clean, mommy is coming in with a wastebasket or with a bag, and everything she sees on the floor is going in the bag. And either he'll have to pay to get his things back, or he'll only get one thing back a day. But make it creative. If you can make it a game, that's all the better. But determine a meaningful consequence, and make sure there is a positive social influence. If everybody else is doing something against what you have said, the kid will follow. And so make sure there's a positive influence, that other kids are cleaning up in the family or whatever else. And then make sure the limits are understood. Now, let me set up a little play situation here. How many would drive the car over the speed limit if they knew when they went over the speed limit, the consequence was that something would trigger in the car and it would explode? What is the speed limit around here? I see 100. 100? Was that a good speed limit? Okay, let's for illustration purposes, let's say 100. So, how many would try to go 101 if they knew the consequence was their car would blow up? None of you would. The consequence is too big, okay? But let's say that the only consequence would be that a little sign would pop up on your car that would say, "You're speeding, slow down." Okay? How many would go over 100 if that's all that happened? As a little sign would pop up, "Oh my goodness, this is somebody you do not want to have as your child," because he would go over the limit if that popped up. All right? So that's not a very meaningful consequence, in other words. No. No, you're late to something, you got to get there on time. The reward of getting there is bigger than having that. But what if you had to pay $50 for every time that sign popped up? Now, would you go over the speed limit if you knew that every time that sign popped up in your car that you are speeding, that you would have to pay $50? Now let's see who would. No, nobody would go over it. What if it was only $25? What if it was only $2? Oh, look at all the takers. All right. Would you raise your hand again? We just have to see the kids we don't want to have. Okay, we don't want to have that kid. Come on. There we go. We see a bunch of that. Yeah, because these are the kids that will take the chances. That's not much of a consequence. Who cares that that's a limit? And they will go over it. They are just exactly like we are. Now, what if everybody was running around with their little sign up that said, I've been speeding? Now, how many of you, regardless of what the price was, but if everybody was running around with their little sign up on the car, how many of you would also go over the speed limit? Come on, raise your hands. Yeah, probably all of you would, because everybody else is doing it. How would they catch all of us, you know? There's no way, and obviously the speed limit is crazy because everybody's going over it, and the social influence of others not keeping the limits is amazing. That social push to do what everybody else is doing. Kids are the same way. You need to make sure that limit is meaningful. There's a big enough consequence. They don't want to go over it. There's that everybody else is not going over it, yet they're held to that standard. They'll go over it. Kids are the same way we are. So just think about that speeding example the next time you try to get your kids to do something and you're setting a limit for them. All right, the third thing I have down as your leadership technique is to reward compliance. And here, I guess a good example is that string that I brought out for a couple of the programs. You know, you want to reward the kid for doing what you want him to do. You want to encourage him. You want to influence him. You want him to follow your role model. But the more you push them in the direction you want them to go, the more they will tend to resist. Now, some say that children are either born defiant or compliant. This is really not true, but they're born with different characteristics. And I'm going to share with you a number of characteristics that research studies have shown that children are different in, and adults too. Activity level. Some kids are highly active. You can hardly keep up with them. And some kids can sit for hours and play with a little puzzle or look at a book. But again, who's going to be the most difficult kid on the block? The quiet one or the active one? When you bring them to church, do you want them to be quiet or active? Well, the kids just can't turn off the active button if that's the thing that they're born with. So those make a little bit more of a challenge to parents. Some have regularity in terms of body functions, and some don't. But the parents who have regular children will tell you, oh, you're trying to toilet train your child? Well, this is what you do. You start at about 8, 9, 10 months of age, maybe a year, and you just know that if you put the child on the little potty and you wait 20 minutes, it will drop out. And you reward him then, and before you know it, this kid will be potty trained by at least 3 years of age. Probably he will be, no, anyway, okay. We have an unrealistic expectation in that. We think by 12 months of age, he'll be potty trained. You know, some kids aren't. And thank goodness they now have pop-ups. Pop-ups is, what do they call them? Pull-ups, pop-ups, pull-ups. Anyway, and kids may go wetting the beds until 6, 7, 8 years of age, but we have made it a lot less of a punishment for them now because they can change their own diapers or pull-ups, but it used to be a really tough thing for kids who had irregular bodily functions and never knew when they were going to have to go potty or not. Regular kids are just a lot easier. Here's another one. Approach or withdrawal as a characteristic response in new situations. The kid who's ready to jump in and go to play school or jump in and come to Sabbath school all by themselves at 3 or 4, you know, is so much easier than the kid who clings to your leg and Mommy, I don't want to go, please, no. And has a very, very difficult time approaching new situations. Level of sensory threshold. Some are extremely sensitive, and others, you can take them a long way before they sense that anything is going wrong. Adaptability to change is another thing that they're born with. Some just fall into a routine, and some never get the routine. Positive or negative mood. We see that in children very early in life. Intensity of response. I think I may have told you about my daughter, Kari. Very intense. Growing up, when she was good, she was very, very good. But when she was bad, she was naughty. And intensely this, intensely that, intensely frightened, intensely happy. She got to be 16 and she decided she wanted to be intensely happy. And she chose positive happiness, compliance. And people say, I have never seen anybody sit through a whole year of anatomy class with a smile on their face. But that was my Kari, intensely positive, even in the middle of anatomy class. But that was a choice, but it didn't come naturally. Distractibility or persistence. Some are easily distractible. I mean, you think you've put them to bed and they're asleep, and you tiptoe down the hallway, and they wake up screaming because they hear something that others can sleep through a hurricane. And children are just different. Now, if you put this together, if you happen to have a child who is highly active, who is irregular in terms of body function, who is scared to approach new things and withdraws from anything new, who can't adapt to any change in routine, who is negative in terms of mood, has an intense response to life, and is highly distractible. You know what you have got in this kid? You've got a problem. That's the kid that you begin to pull your hair out over. But you slowly begin to work on each one of those characteristics, and it's amazing how adaptable children can be. But it's not until they get to the time when they can choose how they want to be that you might get a more permanent change. That'll probably pretty much stay with them for life. That's what they are made up of. So we have to realize children aren't necessarily born good or bad. They're born with various characteristics. And if you get a clump of those that are more difficult to work with, just say an extra prayer, take an extra parenting class, give each other an extra hug every single day of your life and say, we'll make it. This is just a little kind of a bump in our road of parenting. We can make it. So, here are some categories of behavior. Acceptable behavior. How do you get more of it? You reward the kid for acceptable behavior. You're there. In fact, they say that children do better when they're newborns if you let them know you're close to them. Maybe not interrupt their playing with whatever mobile they're playing with, but you're just there. Maybe put a hand on their tummy or something, or you just start singing close to them so they know you're there. They need that approximately every 10 minutes. They need to know that mom or dad are close. That makes them feel secure. Now, category 2 behavior is unacceptable behavior. How do you get less? Well, you correct, and you correct, and you correct, but in between you do a lot of encouraging of the positive. Now, category 3 behavior is the one that we mostly struggle over. This is annoying behavior. It's not really right behavior or wrong behavior. It's just plain annoying. This is slurping soup. This is eating spaghetti. Now, it's not really wrong. It's just so annoying. Now, if you've got everything handled in terms of the undesirable behavior, and the kids are willing to listen to you and willing to turn and do what you want them to do, then work on the annoying behavior. Okay? But if you're having trouble with unacceptable behavior, focus on that. Too many negatives in a child's life are not good. You're saying no here, no here, no here, no here. No, that's basically a no-no. It makes life miserable for the little one. So just category 3 behavior when you got everything else taken care of. All right. Learn how to divert young children. And we mentioned one of those things last night in terms of giving kids a choice within a no-choice situation. If they don't want to take a bath, you say, hey, it's time to take a bath. Would you like bubbles or boats? And they have a decision to make. So learn diversion tactics. If you see that they're getting trouble in this situation, say, it's story time, let mommy read you a story, and just distract them from that and get them into something positive. Play act problems away. Kids love it when you play that they're the mommy and you're the baby, and they get to tell you what to do to pick up the room, and it's just use your creativity and have fun with the kids, but it diverts them from some negative behavior. Here's another, impose logical consequences. Now, there are 2 kinds of consequences. There are logical consequences, and then there are consequences that are just pulled out of the air, that have no logic at all. So if the child is, let's say, let's think of something for an older child. Okay, a child is spending too much time on his iPad. And you tell him that he can only have his iPad to do his homework or to look up things that need to be looked up for school. And this kid, you find out, is on a number of play game apps or whatever. And what would be a logical consequence for him so that he can learn that he shouldn't have been doing that? Taking away his bike, would that do it? Not letting him go fishing with his dad. Would that do it? No, it would have to be iPad related. That's when you take away the iPad. Now, some parents know that kids are so attached to iPads that the kid has said a lie, and you take away the iPad. The kid has hurt a friend, broken a window, doesn't want to clean up the mess, and you take away the iPad. No. That's not logical. That is just, you've come up with that because you know the kid likes his iPad. It's like one dad said, I'm always giving my children consequences. He said, I spank them for this, I spank them for that, I spank them, but that's not logical, you know. So try to think of something that is meaningful for what the child has done. If the child has, lying is the hard one, because you might have to think of something logical that had to do with a lie. So if the child said, I finished my homework, and he didn't finish his homework, it might have to be related to homework. Like, mommy's going to give you an extra half an hour of homework for a week. And you come up with something, reading Bible texts or something else that he can do. So that's what you do for lying. But most of the time you can think of, you know, if he's late coming home on his bicycle, maybe his bicycle, he can't ride for a couple days or something like that. But the way you can be absolutely certain you've got the greatest consequence in the world is ask the kid, what do you think should happen because you did this? Now, the kid's answer may be logical or it may be not, but it'll be meaningful. 16-year-old daughter had a day off from school. The teachers had a in-service training day, and the kid thought she could come home and not do anything. Well, mom thought it was a wonderful vacation day where now the kid could actually load the dishwasher after breakfast and could put her own, do the wash, and she had a number of other things for this 16-year-old daughter to do. So mother says to her right after breakfast, honey, do you mind getting the dishwasher loaded? This is my vacation day. But she reluctantly loaded the dishes. Then mom said, oh, and by the way, could you, I put all the wash together, could you put the white load in, just pull all out the white clothes and get those into the washing machine. And the daughter said, Mom, I am not your maid. I don't have to do this. This is my vacation. Well, mother didn't like that, but it was like the third thing that mom came up with that she wanted her daughter to do, and this daughter unloaded all of her anger. I hated, Mom, when you say these things. You know, you treat me just like a maid. This is not fair. This is my vacation day, and I should not have to do anything. I hate it when you're like this. And mother looked at her daughter, 16 years old, and she said, wow, you're angry, aren't you? Yes, I'm angry. This is my vacation. Mom said, you are so angry that you said some very disrespectful things to me, and I feel hurt when you've said those things to me. So what I want you to do is think of the worst possible consequence that I can give you so that you will remember to never, ever speak to your mom with that tone of voice and say those negative words to your mother. I need to respect you, you need to respect me. So think of the worst possible consequence that will teach you that lesson. The daughter thought for a moment, and she said, Mom, I think you ought to give me a sugar cube. Mom said, a what? Yes, said the daughter. You see, Mom had just had a little woman's tea at her house, and she had decorated the tops of all those little sugar cubes with little flowers, little stars, and the daughter wanted one of those. And Mom said, well, how is that going to teach you to not say those bitter words to me? And the daughter said, well, it could remind me to keep my words sweet. And Mom said, you mean if I give you a sugar cube, that consequence will teach you, I mean, you might as well go the distance. It will teach you for a lifetime to keep your words sweet to me? Yes, said the daughter, I think it would. What would you do as a parent? Mom gave her a sugar cube. And I said, when I heard this story from this mom, I said, did it work? And she said, well, yeah. We went a couple years, actually, and this daughter kept her anger to herself or got rid of it in other ways, but she never did spout off to me again until she was about 18. And all of a sudden, something burst inside this girl, and out came those disrespectful words. And all I had to say, Mom said, sweetheart, do you need another sugar cube? And it changed that daughter just like that, and she apologized to her mom. So a consequence doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be hard, and it needs to hurt the child, or it needs to be harsh. If it teaches the lesson, it was a good consequence, okay? Problem solving with negotiation. Let's see where we are in terms of time. Okay. Problem solving with negotiation. My friend Raylene had kids who wanted to go to camp. And the camp was $150, and there were actually 3 camps in a row. So $100 a camp, I think it was, yeah. $100 a camp, they'd have to have $300 to go to all 3 camps. And she told the kids, because they were terrible of paying back loans, and already they had not paid back some of their loans. So she told them, kids, if you can earn from doing extra things around the house, and I have jobs you can do for $5 here, $10 there, and if you're willing to do those jobs or ask the neighbors for jobs and earn $300 by the time the camp starts, by the time the first camp starts, if you have earned $300, your dad and I will throw in another $50 for you to spend at camp. But if you can't, then you're not going to camp. And they made up a contract that Jim promises to earn $300 by July 15th for camp. If he fails to earn that, he will not be going to camp. But if he does earn $300 by July 15th, Mom and Dad will give him $50 of spending money. A simple negotiation, a simple contract. Why not teach your children early about the world, about contracts? And both of those boys earned their $300 before camp. Otherwise, it would have been, Mom, give me this. Oh, Mom, I still have $80. Please, please, I want to go to camp. No fair. Everybody else is going to camp. Please give me the $80. None of that. A contract was set up. The kids followed it. Same thing with loans. You can do this. The same mom set it up finally for her kids that if they needed extra money for something, she would loan them, but they had to pay a 10% loan initiation fee. That's pretty stiff. But if they wanted $10, they had to pay $1 to get the loan. Now, does that kind of sound like reality in terms of getting a mortgage or getting a loan, some kind of, yeah, that's teaching the kids about life. And then they had so many days that they had to before paying it back. And if it wasn't paid back, guess what? They had a penalty put on that loan. And it was all in a contract. The kids knew when they needed $50 for the jacket that they wanted for school. They could get the money, but there was going to be a contract. And then she made a lot of jobs in the house available so that they could wash the windows, for example. That wasn't I don't believe in giving money for living. That's the welfare state, to just give an allowance for nothing. But as kids are learning about life, they can they can basically know they got to do the life things, make their beds, brush their teeth, etc. That's not negotiable in terms of getting money. But if they want extra jobs, you'll give them extra jobs. Okay, we're almost finished here. Let me just do a couple more, okay? And I know I'm over time, but I know that if I let you out too early, you'll go home and take a nap. So I figured a good half an hour for answering questions or whatever you want, that's fine, and then we'll start again close to 4, because some people might be coming back at 4. So there's a method to my madness. All right. When Kevin was 12 years old, he said to me one night, "I hate it when you tell me to go to bed." I said, "Kevin, I tell you to go to bed because you wouldn't go to bed if I didn't tell you." "Yeah, but you never tell my sisters." And I said, "Well, where are your sisters right now?" And he said, "Well, 9 o'clock, I guess they're in bed." And I said, "Yeah, your sisters are responsible. They go to bed at a decent time, so I don't have to tell them when to go to bed. But I never know if you'll ever go to bed if I don't tell you it's bedtime." Kevin finally said, "Mom, I will go to bed. I promise you." And I said, "Okay, Kevin, here's the deal. Freedom for responsibility. If you can show me that you can be responsible and go to bed at whatever time you choose, choosing your own bedtime, I'll give you that freedom, but you have to be responsible the next day. And if you can do it for 7 days in a row, I will never again tell you when to go to bed. But this is what you have to do. On the first night, you have to set your alarm, so you wake up with the alarm. You have to put a happy face on your face, a smile on your face, and you have to get dressed by yourself. You need to be at breakfast at the time that we have breakfast. You need to help get the school lunches packed, and you need to be in the car by the time Daddy's ready to go to school without any reminders. And then, when you come home from school, you need to ask me if there are any chores that we need to have done that day. Do happily the chores with a smile on your face. Do your homework that you need to do. And if you can do that for 7 days in a row, I promise you, I will never, ever again tell you when to go to bed. I said, "When do you want to start this, Kevin?" He said, "I want to start it tonight." I couldn't believe it. It was already late. But I said, "Okay." I went to bed at 11 o'clock. I have no idea when he went to bed, but I knew he'd blow it. I knew what Kevin's behavior was like, and he was gonna blow it. I couldn't believe the next morning. He had set his alarm and awakened by himself, and he came out of his room dressed. I'd never seen him dressed that early in the morning. And he got to the breakfast table, actually helped with getting breakfast ready and helped with the lunches, and he was the first one in the car ready to go to school. I couldn't believe it. So often we judge our kids by past behavior instead of giving them a chance. And I said, he's going to blow it when he comes back from school. Guess what? He came back from school and said, Mom, are there any chores you want me to do? Well, yes, I gave him a couple things to do. He immediately sat down, did his homework, and fell asleep at 6:15 in the big beanbag chair. But he made it through the first day. And nothing helps kids be more responsible than feeling the excitement of being successful for, the first time, and then the second time, and then third time. He went 7 days, and I have never told that kid when to go to bed since that time. That was the end. He had earned the right to be responsible for his own behavior. And so I say, as your children get older, put the banner over the doorway and say, freedom for responsibility. And you say, I can't believe this would work. But if children are able to, SEA is the acronym that I give, if children are able to, S, seek information, E, I'm spelling C, S-E-A, like the ocean, okay? S, seek information. E, evaluate the alternatives. And A, accept the consequences. Guess what? You should be letting them make the decision. Just go over all those things. Okay, what information do you need to know to make a good decision? What are the alternatives? If the kid is so biased to do one thing, he should not be making his own decision. If your husband is too biased about some decision, or if you as a wife are too biased, you should not be making your own decision. It won't be a good decision. Look at the different and evaluate the different alternatives. That's the E. And the A, are you willing to accept the consequences? And if the kid is old enough to accept the consequences, be them good or bad, negative, let them make the decision, and they will make good decisions. You can step out of their lives and be happy that they are making good decisions. My last story is this. A mom and dad heard about this way of bringing up children, of letting them have responsibilities and making decisions on their own. And if they will do this, they will make good decisions. So they used to tell their kids what to do, and they decided they would have a family meeting time where they would actually vote on what the family should do, what the rules should be. And one evening when they were in a family meeting together, the mom and dad brought up the idea of a curfew time. And they explained to the kids that, the majority would rule, 3 kids, 2 parents. The majority would rule. They brought up all the consequences, the need for a curfew time. They talked about the alternatives, and if they didn't have a curfew time, what that would do in terms of agony on the parents' part, wondering where their kids were and why they weren't home. And then they took a vote. And 3-2, the kids voted no curfew. Mom was so upset. She said, there has to be a curfew. We cannot live without a curfew. And Dad said, they don't know enough yet. They don't have enough information to make a good decision. So Dad and Mom got together, and they decided that Mom would pack her overnight bag, leave the house without saying anything, and stay overnight with her friends. Dad was there at 5:30 when the kids all got home, and they said, hey, where's Mom? What's for supper? And Dad said, well, she's not home yet. Oh, the kids said, she's always home by 5:30, isn't she? Well, said Dad, she isn't today, and you kids better fix some supper for us. They ate supper. 8 o'clock came. Dad, hasn't Mom called? No, said Dad. She's old enough. She can probably make the decisions by herself. I'm sure she's making wise decisions, and she is just fine. But Dad, you don't even know where she is. No, I really do not know where she is. Dad, this is not fair. Well, we better call the police. By 10 o'clock, they were ready to call the police. And Dad said, you know what, kids? Just go to bed. I'm sure your mom is just fine. They could not understand his behavior. They went to bed. 6 o'clock in the morning, they were up, running into Mom and Dad's room, and Mother was not there. Dad, where is Mother? Didn't she come home last night? No, said Dad, she did not come home last night. But aren't you worried? Well, it's a little strange, isn't it, for your mom not to come home? But you know what? We did vote that we didn't need to have a curfew. We did vote that there was no need for people to call and say where they were if they were going to be late. There was no need to do that, and so I guess your mom just decided she was going to just take off for a while. Dad, that's irrational. You can't do that as a parent. Well, Dad said, Mom did, and just about at that point, Mom walked in the room, and the kids ran to her, and they said, Mom, where have you been? And she explained where she had been, and she said, there was no need for me to tell anybody because we voted that we would just trust each other and not have any curfews and not have to tell anybody where we were going. But you're a mother, they said. They immediately called a family council, and they took another vote on the curfew issue, and it was now 5-0. 3 kids and 2 parents all voted. They needed to know where each other was going and what time they were going to be home. So sometimes you have to be a little creative to be able to be the leader you want. So whether it's a hug and a kiss and a kick in the pants or mom sleeping over to prove that you did indeed need a curfew time, there are ways to help train your kids in the way they should go. So your training will be a learning experience for them and not punishment. I took a little extra time there, but I'm going to give you a break now, and we'll come back at 4, and we'll talk about character development. And sitting for such a long time, please run around the church, watch those chords, but run around the church 7 times, see if it falls down, get some kind of exercise, because you're going to fall asleep when you come back at 4. If you don't, get that blood going through, get a big drink of water, and we'll come back and talk about one of the most important things that I can share with you, and that's what we can do to help our children make wise decisions in the area of building their character. By influence, by information, by all those things that are happening in the world. So that's what we'll do when we come back. Thank you.